In this video, I will show you how to create fire animation in Pixel Composer. I will cover 3 different ways to create the effect, the noise method, the displacement, and the particle. So let's get to it. The first method is to use the noise map. So we can start with any tileable noise, like the Berlin noise. And we can see that this node is tileable by enable the tile option in the preview panel. The next step, we're just gonna send it to the move up node, which is basically just a transform node with some default parameter. If we just pan the image up, now we want to enable the tile option too, so that it tile. We can just send this image into the colorize node, right? And we got some fire looking things going on here. The next step we will do is we're gonna add a level node to adjust the contrast of our image, right? We might want the dark part to be darker and the bright part to be brighter. But now what we got is fire texture. If we want it to actually look like a fire, we might want to blend it with different shapes. Like for example, we can have a gradient shape. We can press Ctrl B while selecting 2 nodes with an output to blend it together. And then we're gonna use multiply blend mode to blend the fire texture and the gradient together. Set blend mode to multiply. Now as you can see, we start to have more of the fire effect going on here. We also might want to set the complete black, and we already create some convincingly looking fire effect. Another bonus when using this method is that our original noise is tileable, at least horizontally tileable, right? And every version we do here doesn't affect the horizontal tileability of it, which means our final image also is going to be horizontally tileable. And now you can start experimenting with different nodes we have here. The first thing is obviously you can change the gradient in the colorize node, or you can adjust the level properties to control the contrast or the brightness of your image. You can change the noise by decreasing or increasing the iteration. You can add or reduce detail from your final image. You can increase or decrease the scale, or you can use different noise completely. Another noise that can be used for fire effect is a cellular noise. We can add cellular noise and then connect it to the same setup. As you can see, we will now create a completely different looking fire effect. One thing we may want to change is the blend mode, because by default we are using the multiply mode, right? But this mode gonna make your image darker, so this black spot gonna stay black at the end of your image. You might not want that in this kind of effect. You can change it to the overlay mode. The overlay mode will make the dark area in your foreground image darker and the white area become brighter. We can even add some blur effect to our initial noise. However, when you add blur effect, you're gonna see that the edge here is transparent. You will have to go to the setting and then set the oversample property to repeat to keep the seamless property of your original image. And here we just try blending different noise together to create an even more complex fire animation. Of course, this image doesn't have to be a gradient. If you want to create like a single flame instead of an entire row of flame, you can use any of the shape node as well. I think the teardrop gonna create some flame looking shape, and then send it to blur node to blur out the edges. Set the oversample here to clamp to keep the back or to keep the edge of the image stay black. And as you can see, the shape of the fire will now correspond to your shape property or the shape image you put in here. Now that's the first method. The second way to do it is to use displacement node. A displacement or the displace node is a really useful node that allows you to shift or scramble image in some very interesting and creative way. So we can start with some basic shape. In this case, we're gonna choose the teardrop shape. And just by setting it to displace node, the first thing you will notice is that your image got shift a little bit, right? Here it shifts to the left by 1 pixel. You can change the amount of displacement in the position properties. However, this is just basic transformation. What makes displace node interesting is that you can supply displace map to control how much each of the pixel would be moving. If you give it some random noise like the Berlin noise node, and then connect it to the displace map properties, you start to distort image in an interesting and kind of random way. Another way to describe how a displacement node works is to use the gradient like this. In an area where we have brighter pixel in the gradient here, your image will be shift more, right? And in an area where there's no color, when it's complete black, your image will not move. But if you want the gray color here to be the center, where the color does not move, and in the white area here it moves by +1 and the black area here is moved by -1. You can also do that by adjusting the middle value here. By default it's set to 0, so the black here will be 0 and it increase upward to 1. If you set it to 0.5, now you will see that the gray area or 50% gray here will now become the area or the color where the pixel doesn't move. And then the white pixel will be where the movement occurs the most, and the black pixel when the movement occurs in the opposite direction. So now we can do the same thing as we did previously, which is we're gonna animate the noise upward because our noise is already tileable, we don't have to worry about the seams. You will see that the final image will also distort in a flame-like motion. But now the flame movement is a little bit too extreme. You might want to make the bottom area of the flame here move a little bit less, and the movement gonna increase as you go up. So you can also use another gradient and go to the strength property. This is where you're gonna use the map pebble parameter, which is a new feature in 1.16 that allows you to define the strength or define a value in the parameter using image map. You can click on toggle map, and now you can see that there's a property called strength map. You can then drag your image here into the strength map properties, and your basic text box will now change into the minimum and maximum. So the minimum will be the values when there is no colors again, and the maximum will be the values when the mask has a complete white colors. We can shift or move our gradient a little bit. As you can see here, the bottom area here where we have the darker color will have less movement, and the top area where the strength map is really bright, there's gonna be a lot of movement. The next thing we can do is we can add some shading to our flame, because right now it's just one solid white image. And there's a way to create some fake toon shading by using the bevel node. By default, the bevel node will just simply bevel or extrude out our image, right? But there's this transform property that allows it to be really useful when you want to create some fake toon effect. First is that you can decrease the scale, hold Alt to adjust the values lower, and you will see now that the scale of the color gradient become less steep. You can also adjust this shape property or using the control gizmo here to control where your light source is. And now our final flame look a little bit more interesting. You can then send this to the colorize node, but we're gonna send it to the level node first to control some contrast again, and then colorize. And you can see we can now create a different type or different looking type of flame compared to the previous one. You can adjust all the property as you want. The first thing you might want to adjust is the position or the displacement amount here, because it will greatly affect how your flame move. And also you can keep the X value 0. Now the flame will only go upward. You can also change the noise as well. By increasing or decreasing the detail, you're gonna create more complex wave animation. Here in the example, I used the bevel node after the displacement instead of before, and you will see that the effect of the result will also look different as well. Now one thing of note is that the bevel node doesn't work very well with transparency. So if you want to have a more smooth animation, and you go to the displacement mode and you set the texture interpolation to like bilinear, you're gonna see that the bevel node will break immediately. So if you want to have some anti-aliasing, you might want to set the bevel node to an original non-alias version first before you send it to displacement. And the third way to create fire animation is to use the particle system. I think this is like the original way to create fire animation in most of the game engine as well. You just create some particle emitter, right? And you have it emit some like blurry looking image. You're gonna reduce the spawn area and set the render type to additive. Then we're gonna reduce the lifespan of the particle, and we're gonna set the movement to be directly above the spawner. And we're just gonna spawn a bunch more particle and set the colors over lifetime into some fire colors. So at first the fire gonna be very bright actually because it's very hot, and as time goes on it's gonna cool down and it's gonna become darker. Now this is way too bright because we set the blend mode to additive, so we can even make it start a little bit darker, and we're gonna control the alpha over time so that the particle will fade away. If you want to create more complexity or more randomness, you can then go to the spawn side and maybe make it spawn at the random size. You can give it a random velocity or random like opacity. There are a lot of control in the particle node. I think I might want to create separate video talking about each of them. But now let's go through what we set in our current fire animation. We select some cloud sprite as a particle sprite. We have it spawn on top directly and then move upward from the spawn area. We set the lifespan to be shorter than usual, increase the spawn amount. Then we tell it to move upward at some given velocity here. We then give it some random scaling. We add some color over time property and some alpha over time, and we set the blend mode to additive. Now this is quite classic flame, right? But with particle node, you have a lot more control over how your flame looks, which allows you to create even more stylized animation. Like if you don't provide any sprite at all, Pixel Composer will generate some default sprite, which will just look like a dot like this, right? One thing you could do is you can increase the scale property and change the scale over time to make the particle get smaller over time. And as you can see here, it will actually render out a circle. And this way of generating circle is actually better than you providing a circle sprite and scale it down, because with some uneven scaling like some decimal scaling, the output circle might not even look as good. This way, Pixel Composer will generate a circle for you which will look way nicer. And now I'm gonna add more element to our image. We're gonna add some circle, we're gonna use solid shape instead. And we're gonna add some shading, the fake shading using the bevel node again, and some outline. And the result here, as you can see, is a really interesting looking stylized flame that you might be able to use in your pixel art. And these will be 3 different ways to create fire effect in Pixel Composer. Of course, there is a lot more ways you can create fire animation, so if you have any idea or different technique, you can share with us in the comment section, or you can also share your creation in Pixel Composer Discord as well. But for now, thank you for watching and see you in the next one.